Welcome back to Until We Agree, the only podcast on the internet that keeps going until we agree. My name is Matt Howard, joined as always by my co-host Tyler Pritchard, and it's a new world. It's been a week since episode 1 dropped, and our life has changed. Things are blowing up. We're reaching a new level of notoriety we've never known before, Tyler. So anything you want to add to just how crazy this last week has been since our faithful fans have elevated us?
It's been drastic. It's been drastic. I got recognized today.
I heard. Yeah. What happened there?
Yep. Yeah. So this very nice police officer pulled me over, and after I gave him my license, he knew my name, ended up asking me for my autograph. That was post, speeding ticket, whatever. And, it was a crazy experience, really surreal. No pictures or anything, so it was really intimate. But things are changing. Things are moving quick.
Yeah, super respectful of the cop too, to just respect your privacy. But still, yeah.
Weird thing too. I was on my feet. I got a speeding ticket on my feet because I'm just so fast. I wanted to kind of dive into that maybe a little bit later about the 2 times we foot raced. But go ahead.
It was one time and there was cheating involved. But it, like we were saying, crazy week with the analytics. Are there anything that you've kind of seen coming across statistically that's kind of blown your mind in this first week of podcast fame?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of discussed it a little earlier, but the one user who was on web browser blows my mind.
A maniac, whoever that is.
That's unreal.
Shout out to you. We love you. Keep using Google Chrome to listen to us. That's awesome, and we're honored, truly.
Yeah, what stands out to you?
Something that's really blown my mind. Our demographic goes crazy. 69% male. And I know you're thinking that's an easy joke. No, that's a real life statistic that we're living in. So shout out to all the men out there and a couple of women who might just be our girlfriends. But we're happy to have all of you. Bummer about the speeding ticket, but cool about the fame. Why don't we get jumping into our topics for the day?
Yeah, I would love to. So, I mean, we've got a pretty heated one. We haven't... See, this is where we're going to get a little crazy because we had a little bit of the talk on Is a Bucket a Hole prior to the recording, but when I asked you, is water wet, and heard what you had to say about it, I mean, I was furious off the bat, but we haven't really gone into it. So I'm excited to hear what delusional world you're living in to where you think that water, let me get this straight, you believe water is not wet.
Well, yeah, that's just the real world. From what I understand, water isn't wet. It is something that creates wetness, sure. But yeah, I don't, the thing about this one is it kind of comes back to that same thing we talked about last week. If we're just delving into definitions, by definition,
here we go.
Water is not wet.
How? What definition are you using to what is that coming from?
Just science. Water creates wetness. And I've said that once, I'll say it again. Water creates wetness.
I'm sure you will say that many times because that's probably the only thing you have written down.
No, just think about it. Water, you have to have something that can change state from being wet to dry for it to be able to get wet, if that makes sense. I know that didn't maybe come across super clearly, but if we think about it like this, something that came to my mind first is a fish is wet all the time because it lives in water. If you take a fish out of water, it dries out. You can't really take water out of water. And so that's...
Yeah, so it's constantly wet. That's my point.
No, because water can't...
You can't take water out of water. You just made my point.
No, exactly. Water can't get wet because it is the medium that creates wetness. I don't see where you're coming from where you're saying it is wet because it's not getting itself wet.
But what you're saying and how you're phrasing that to me, here's how I hear it. I'm gonna kind of jump into another medium.
Oh no!
You're saying
if you bring up a wiffle ball right now, I'm gonna throw up.
No. I'll stick to something that you know a little bit more about, like an airplane.
Okay.
So you're trying to say that airplanes can't fly because they make fly. Is that right?
What did you just say? I did not think you could say something more ridiculous than the whippable thing.
But that's what you're saying. That's what. Wait, hold on.
Say it one more time, please.
Your reaction is how I feel when you say it about water. So that's what's crazy. Like, I'm saying the same thing you're saying, but about something else.
Please,
because you're saying the medium doesn't translate to the effect of the thing.
Okay, can you say it one more time?
I can.
This is the most insane thing I've ever heard.
All right, so basically, like a plane, which would be the water in this scenario, right?
No, okay, yeah, keep going.
So the plane would be like the water,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the plane would be like the water, and the water gets wet in the same way that the plane takes flight. So just because the plane isn't always flying doesn't mean it doesn't make flight.
Plane?
Yeah, I mean,
no.
I don't see where you're not connecting the dots
No.
because, like, what the point I'm trying to make is just because it's not in the air doesn't mean it can't fly.
I don't have anything to say to what you're saying right now.
So you concede?
No, I don't concede. Let me, if I can maybe like shift to kind of where my train of thought is going, because a plane is a plane because of the properties it's given. Water,
sure.
Water.
Yep.
I'm not assigning wetness to water, so I think that's maybe where the disconnect is. Water is not wet. Planes can fly and planes can land. So that very good, Tyler. You are so right about that. I'm not even kidding. You are so right about that. But kind of, here's a little story that kind of came to mind about us. Because believe it or not, audience, we used to be good friends until very recently, when all this fighting kind of came to a head. We actually took a little trip to Jacksonville Beach to be specific, one time. It was a fun trip. Stayed in a little Airbnb shack right on the ocean. Played some golf, which was cool. But kind of the thing that stands out to, I think, probably both of us, don't agree with this yet because we have more to talk about. But kind of one of the main points that we kind of look back to from that trip was when we went boogie boarding. We boogie boarded for probably 6 hours straight. I don't think we left the water for 6 hours. The ocean.
Yeah.
It was a day. It was.
I remember.
Yeah, it was awesome. But here's the thing about what happened that day. We got in the ocean for 6 hours. We rode waves. We crashed. We boogied. We got wet. Our bodies got wet because we were in the ocean. The water in the ocean made us wet. When we stepped in the water and the ocean, the properties of the ocean never changed. We did not impact the state of the water that was in the ocean. The ocean created wetness on us, but we didn't do anything to impact the ocean itself. Are you following me here?
Not really, but mostly because it didn't make sense.
It's like saying
if we were to step in, hold on. I have the perfect analogy. So if you have a wiffle ball.
No, I knew it was coming.
Right.
Yeah, talk to me about the wiffle ball, please.
So if you were to make an incision into the wiffle ball.
Yeah, with scissors.
It's still a wiffle ball.
It's a broken wiffle ball. It's a different thing now.
Sure. No, that was more of a joke because we did get a few comments about the wiffle ball scenario last week.
Every comment. Yes.
A better example would be, I mean, I'm going to go back to the plane. If you step into a plane, we're in a plane and we're flying, but we're not changing the plane. It's still a plane. Like, what does being in the water have to do with it? Like, you're just saying properties and like throwing out three syllable words, like you're doing something, but you're not.
Are you talking about the word property? You're struggling with the word property.
I'm not struggling with it, but like I just feel like you think it's an accomplishment to throw out a three syllable word, and that's like winning you the debate.
No, but it's
not.
When it's a real word that makes sense in the argument, it is winning me the debate. But yeah, keep going.
But it's not, because what you're saying, and let me see if I was in fact following you. You're saying that when you go into water, when we went into water as bros even, that, since we didn't affect the properties of the water, like actually, I don't understand can you please lay that out in maybe smaller words?
We did not make the water anything when we walked in the water, besides maybe kind of rad when we were shredding waves.
Sure.
The ocean made us wet. The ocean does not make itself wet. The ocean gives off wetness.
Okay, but that doesn't make any sense because doesn't something have to be wet to wetify you?
No, there's properties that can be passed off to us. It's like osmosis. Don't quote me on that. But
I will not. I'm not quoting you on anything you say here.
Like if I slapped you in the face, your face is gonna get red from the reaction that I did to from what I did to your face. Like there will be a reaction on your body, but not on my body. Then the same way, water passes off that wetness.
Now I do want to say real quick, you say that there won't be any reaction to your body, but I do vividly remember a time we fist bumped and you cried about it for maybe 15 minutes because your fist hurt.
What's the point? I have small wrists. Big deal. What I'm trying to say, here's what's so great about this argument so far to this point. You have not mentioned anything about water yet. You've only tried to tear down my water arguments and then say, but water is plain. What does that mean? You haven't not talked about what water is to you yet. You've just talked about planes for some reason. Why is water wet? Please tell me.
So, most scientists define wetness as a liquid's ability to maintain contact with a solid surface. So, water does that.
Water is not a solid surface.
No, water's not the solid surface.
You just lost.
Clings to solid.
You just lost.
No, water clings to solid surfaces. It's
right.
To maintain contact with the solid surface, which water does because water's an adhesive.
No, the thing that gets wet is the solid surface in that definition. The water clings to something to make that something wet.
Does it not have to be wet to make it wet? Right?
No, because that's not a property of water. Because you just said that a property of something that gets wet is that it's a solid surface. In the same way that you can make an ice cube wet if you put water on it, but if the ice cube is not giving off if it's not melting, that ice cube is not wet. Implicitly, it has to be given something that can a liquid that can cling to it. In your definition that you just said.
I would not consider an ice cube wet though because it's frozen water. That's not just the solid form of water doesn't make it wet.
Right, and
it's only the liquid form.
Exactly. You just said what I was saying.
I mean exactly. No, what?
Yeah, that's exactly what I just said. In the solid form, that's the only way something can get wet. Water is a liquid, so it can't get wet. He's silent because he lost.
No, because what you're saying is you have to melt something for it to be wet. But what you're doing when you're melting it is liquefying it, which makes it wet.
I was not talking about melting the ice
And you
cube.
know what a water is?
What is a water?
A liquid.
No, I'm not. I'm saying if you put an external water source on an ice cube, that can make the ice cube wet. The ice cube in itself is not wet until you add water to it. I'm not talking about melting. This is
But does it not add water to it?
This is
when you melt it? Does it not add water to it when you melt it?
It does, but then that the water.
But what? Go ahead.
The water is making the ice cube wet. The ice cube is not making the water wet.
The water is not making the ice cube wet.
Did I say that? I don't know what I'm.
You said. I think you just said, and we might have to roll the tape back because I believe
here's the problem.
I kind of zoned out.
We
but I believe you just said the water is not making the ice cube wet. The water is making the ice cube wet. Is that what you just said?
We don't have a producer, so I can't play that back.
I wouldn't want to if I were you.
I don't think I want to either. The ice cube is a bad example for this because I'm kind of lost in the ice cube. But what I know is that you need a solid object to make, the liquid has to cling to a solid, and that's what makes it wet. That was the definition you just read. And so water as a non-solid object can't do that by itself.
the water as a non-solid object can't do that by itself. So when water particles are clinging together,
clinging to like a plane, for example.
Yeah, but I'm talking about just like, up in space, you see the videos of zero-G water, like, and they're in the bubbles,
Sure.
When those hit together and they're like clinging together and they become one big blob, is that not water particle and water particle and water particle? Would they not each be making each other wet?
Wait until you learn that there's particles on Earth too, like water particles.
I know, but I felt like I needed to kind of hyperbolize a little bit. There's a even bigger word than yours.
4 syllables, yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like I needed to do that so you would understand what I was talking about. I do understand that, I could go run a glass of water and there'd be particles touching, but does that not, by your definition, make water wet when water's touching water?
Is fire hot?
Yes.
Yeah, but what makes it hot is the gases that come off of it. In the same way, what makes something wet is the liquid that comes off the water into the solid.
Right, but I don't think the gases argument really plays out, because that would be like saying, like, if you set a fire on fire, is it hot? Like, yeah, but are they two separate fires at this point? Like, what's your argument? That doesn't make any sense.
That's actually a really good segue to our next topic. Should we maybe just move on? Because
I don't think we're gonna see eye to eye on this.
That's kind of where I'm getting to. But here's the great news.
Okay.
If you're listening on Spotify right now, you can click on to the next page on this episode, and you can vote for yourself and tell us what you think. Is water wet? Let us know, and we'll talk about it next week on Until We Agree.
Yeah, I guess we didn't ever go over. It's interesting. You did the intro and you conveniently skipped over the poll results from last week. So maybe we should just head into that real quick before the next topic. Well, it was about 60%, that a bucket is not a hole. And so I feel like I am owed a massive apology.
The thing is, I'm not going to admit that you were right just because you have a bunch of sheep who don't understand what like words mean.
I have a bunch of sheep on my side?
Shout out to our listeners though, for real. You guys are the best.
Yeah, you guys are the best.
But I hate to say that 60% of them are wrong, but 60% are wrong in this example. So I'm going to sleep at night just fine knowing that they're wrong, but that's just me. But yeah, please.
I got to be honest, that doesn't make any sense.
I am pretty crushed that I lost that poll. But this week could be new. So yeah, go and click on over if you're on Spotify and give us a vote and see what you have to say. Weigh in on the topic with us.
Yep, please do. Is water wet?
Yep.
I say no.
And why don't we transition to topic number 2 for the day?
Wow, you didn't even catch that. I say yes, water's wet.
And I say no, water's not wet. What are we talking?
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. The next topic. So, we were kind of looking, we really liked getting into the trolley experiment last week. And we were looking at other kind of mind experiments, thought experiments, and came across the Ship of Theseus. If you don't know what that is, it is basically, so it asks the question that if you replace every part of a ship one by one until none of the original parts remain, is it the same ship at the end? And what would be your answer to that?
I would say absolutely it is. What about you?
So, no.
Oh.
Because they are, if it's every single part.
Yeah, I mean.
It can't be the same ship.
Well, yeah, but here's kind of my thought on it. Think about, what makes a ship? Is it really, just the pieces that make the ship, or are we talking the heart and soul of the ship, where the ship has been, who's been on the ship? That's kind of where I'm taking it, is there's more to the life of the ship than just the parts that make it. In the same way that every year, think about flowers dying and blooming again in the spring. There's new petals on those flowers, and but that's still the same flower. There's
that's a wild statement, because
sure
they're the same flower. That's like saying every Honda Civic's the same because it's a Honda Civic.
No, but
Like, it's still a different car.
if you change the transmission in your Honda Civic, it's still the same car. It just has new parts.
Yeah, sure. If you change the transmission alone, it's still the same car. But imagine doing that for every single part.
Your Subaru is still a Subaru, even though now it has a ticket associated with it after today. Like you've lived life in that Subaru, and the people on this boat, they live life on that boat. The boat has been places. The crew has been places. So if we're just saying that, like, just because we're slowly replacing parts, we're not even replacing them all at once. We're grafting in new parts and removing old parts. And so, say we're halfway through transitioning this boat from old to the final edition of the boat that we're getting to. That's still half old, half new. And so, like, those new pieces, they're doing stuff while, like, it's not the complete new yet. Does that make sense? Like, the first piece that gets replaced is almost as old as the rest of the boat, and then it's gonna live the whole life throughout the rest of the boat, right?
Okay, so you're saying your argument is that if old pieces and new pieces are working together, that it becomes the same boat. That's what you're saying?
It's just the boat never changes. It just always stays as it is.
See, it almost made a little bit of sense, but if pieces are constantly moving in and out, that just can't work.
Gas constantly moves in and out of your car. It's still the same car.
That was maybe, and I'm going to try to be respectful.
Sure,
here.
please do.
That was maybe the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Did you listen to yourself talk about a plane when the water is wet debate?
Yeah, and I think that's really going to kill. So we'll let the people decide on that.
Uh-huh.
But for now, let's get back to the car, because that's like, if we're going back to the boat, that's like saying the water that touches the boat is like moving past it, but it's still the same boat. Like, obviously.
I mean,
yeah.
The
That's not the part that matters. It's all the pieces that are being removed from the boat.
I will say,
because let me put you onto this.
Yeah.
If all those pieces that we've taken off, and now we have a whole, I would call it a new boat, and we've now put all the old pieces back together, and now we have two boats. Which one's the original?
That's a great question. That's a totally new debate that I wasn't prepared for.
It is a totally new debate, but what it seems like you're saying is that the heart and soul lives on because it had the crew.
Yeah, I think I think you might have an argument if we just make this new boat and then just don't use it, we might as well just bought new materials and just built a new boat at that point. So your argument doesn't really hold up super well on that end. My question for you is, say it takes a year to totally replace. I know there's more pieces than this, but let's just say there's 100 pieces on this boat that we're replacing. On January 1st,
maybe way more.
I understand, man. I really do. But on January 1st,
your boat would be sinking.
Okay, there's 3 million pieces that we're changing on this boat.
This boat would sink so fast it'd be too
heavy.
Let's find a good middle point.
There's 1 million. There's 1 million. There's 1 million pieces on this boat that we're replacing. On January 1st, we replace our first piece because we're replacing one at a time. On the same day, so we do that in the morning. And then in the afternoon, the boat has to move.
Why are we doing this? What happened to the boat?
The boat has a job to do. We're replacing the boat slowly.
No, sure, but like what happened? Like a piece break off?
What are you talking about?
It just helps the immersion if I know what happened to the boat.
No, this is scheduled maintenance.
Oh.
Yeah, we're replacing every piece eventually, but we just pick this piece to start. And so we're one piece fixed. That boat then sails an hour away and then comes back. So right now we have
that a 2-hour round trip.
Yep, 2-hour round trip. 999,999 pieces are from the original boat and one is from the new. At what point?
Take one down, pass it.
So true. At what point in your debate on this side, what point does it become a new boat? If we already have a new piece of the boat in the ship and it's already running stuff. Because at this point it's already a totally new boat right now than what it was this morning.
Right. I would go out on a limb and say that until that last piece leaves, it's the same boat.
So you're saying when there's 999,999 new pieces, and then we put on a new telescope.
Yeah, that's what doctors use. Close. It's really close.
There's a doctor on board for this one.
Okay.
When we get the doctor a new stethoscope and complete the boat, suddenly now it's a new boat, even though everything else is totally new besides the old stethoscope.
I wouldn't really call that. I mean, I wouldn't call the stethoscope a part of the boat.
The wheel.
That's
the wheel is the last piece.
Okay, the wheel.
Yeah.
That seems like the heart and soul of the ship. So definitely.
Is it not the heart and soul of the captain though that really like made the boat what it was? And that's my debate.
It's a beating heart. I think he has a beating heart. That if that were replaced, we'd be in a whole different argument. So, yeah, I don't really see that. I don't see a resolution on this either because, like, what you're saying just doesn't.
It's just
make sense.
It's impossible to define when the boat gets new. You know, the boat gets new when things change, or we just accept that the boat is the boat. The boat was always the boat.
The boat gets new when things change.
If one piece changes, it's not the same boat that it was. And let me blow your mind for a second. What if we live in like a universe of like the multiverse? And there's just like one slightly different thing in a different universe than the universe we're in. It's a different universe. You know, that's like the argument you're making right now. Or we just accept that the universe we're in is a boat that has to go through scheduled maintenance sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you really, I mean, you strung a few words together. That was awesome.
Yeah, the audience is gonna love that one though. Don't worry.
I think that they might not. But what they might love is the Q&A portion of the show.
Is this a new segment?
It's a new segment because, I don't know if you know this, but prior to the first episode, there was no vehicle to get questions.
There were no segments. Yeah.
From the so there were no segments. So most segments we're on uncharted territory. Is it still the same podcast, you think? Even though we're adding new segments?
The heart and soul is still the same, yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple questions here that I'm going to go over from our listeners.
And where can listeners submit their own questions for future episodes? Because every week we're going to be doing this.
Bad news if you are on web browser, because I'm not too sure. But if you're on Spotify, we've got a little Q&A. It's basically just gonna say, what should we debate next?
Wow.
And you can put in your suggestions, what you want to hear us debate. So I will go ahead and read a couple of those because we got quite a few. Life's changed in the last week. So basically, DWeezy30 says, "Where do babies come from?"
Oh,
yeah. So, I don't know if there's enough data on that for either of us to make strong points. So we'll go ahead and move to the next.
Yeah, maybe
one.
just move to the next one.
Katie asks, would you rather drive 45 minutes on a route that has no traffic or 30 on a route that's bumper to bumper traffic?
Wow.
And I like that one.
That is a good question.
I would guess that stemmed from the toll road debate from last week. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Katie. I know our listeners love traffic related questions. That's kind of our target audience. So the question is, what's the question? Sorry, can you say that one more time?
So would you rather drive for 45 minutes, zero traffic, or 30-minute drive? I think it's same starting point, same finish point, but 30-minute drive, bumper to bumper traffic.
Gotcha. Yeah. So this is super easy for me. 45, no question.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, let me put it like this. Try and put some thoughts together here. It's the same reason that I took the toll road on the longer drive last week. And sometimes in life, it's just kind of better to not have to stress as much, to just like enjoy the moment more than like, I feel like we live in this world that's so like go, boom, 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 save time here, save time there. I think the peace of mind that comes from not being in super heavy traffic is worth the extra 15-minute drive for me. That's just, I understand this is a personal preference, but at the end of the day, I don't want to live in the stress of a 30-minute drive when I can just wait 15 more minutes and just kind of meander my way.
Yeah. The stress, like what's stressful about sitting in bumper to bumper traffic because it's not like
You got to be on your guard. Like life is not about just getting places quicker. Life is about like the simple joys. I think about like what like brings me like joy and just peace. Like getting off of work early on a Friday afternoon and it's sunny outside. Something like that. Or like when you like go to the gas station and you're like filling up gas and it smells so good. Like stuff like that is like that's like where I want to live. And like
did you do that today? Is that why
no,
you're making this
not even. And but like another example that like was something that was like brought a lot of joy and peace to my life was like when you moved 1,000 miles away. Like those kind of moments are like the moments that like that's what life is about. Like when we're on our deathbed, we're not going to remember the 15 minutes we saved, but we are going to remember the stress of just the daily grind of being in traffic. That's like going to be the points we don't want to like dwell on. So if it takes me 15 more minutes just to get home and just kind of chill on that 15 minutes, I'm going to do that every time.
All right. So, I mean, just a quick, because in my opinion, like I can kind of see where you're coming from, but at the same time, I would rather be home 15 minutes earlier because I got things to do.
What are you going to do in those 15 minutes though?
What are you going to do in those 15 minutes? You're driving.
I'm going to be less stressed in those 15 minutes, and I'm not going to live and think about this. In those 30 minutes in heavy traffic, when there's other cars around, back to the toll road, more accidents. Like the risk is higher. I think you're just like you're ignoring the fact that like life happens and like there's variables that we can't control, and if we can mitigate the risk in those variables, let's do that.
I think you'd get pulled over. That's 15 more minutes of driving time. And it's in a very uncontrolled
Yeah,
manner.
if I'm a criminal,
I would be stuck. There's no way I'm going above the speed limit in bumper to bumper traffic.
You're the cause of traffic now. You were on the side of were you on the interstate today, I assume?
No.
Where were you?
I was on a road.
Sure.
And let me actually, I'll break it down.
Yeah, I actually haven't heard this story.
There's a 45 mile an hour road. Now, my car, I'm lucky enough to have a company car.
Wow.
It is, yep. It is very nice. It's a Subaru, and it has
not sponsored.
Cruise control. No, we are not sponsored. It has cruise control that stays in the lane and does all the other functions of cruise control. So I basically have that on all the time because I drive a lot. And so I had that on. I see the police officer. I have it on 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. Yeah, sure.
So speeding.
You got me. 5 miles an hour over.
Speeding.
Yeah, sure. You got me. But I have that on. I see the police officer ahead of me. I break down to 45, but he still turns on his little lights. His cute little lights are flashing. And so I'm dazzled and stunned because, I mean, these lights are just precious.
Yeah. And
I pull over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually did the responsible thing. I pulled into a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
He comes up, we already went over this part. He recognized me, all this stuff, it's really embarrassing. But he gives me the detail. He says, yeah, our threshold for tickets is 13 miles an hour over, and you were going 14.
Whoa.
Yeah, so what am I supposed to do with that? That feels a little sus, if you ask me.
No way. Were you actually not going 14 over?
I seriously was. I had my cruise control on at 50, and it was in a 45. So like, if he had pulled me over and stuck to his guns and said, "Hey, you're going 5 over," I'd have been like, "All right, well, I mean, we got a little. I mean, pants on a little too tight over here, but all right, you got me."
Mm-hmm.
But he just made that up.
Wow. If we have any,
and it's a 45. By the time I was pulled over into the gas station, I was in a 55.
You were going 0 probably at the gas station.
Well, I was, but the zone was then in a 55, and then you turn out of the gas station that I pulled over into, and about 300 to 400 feet down the road, it turns into a 70. So I'm just like, all right, is this really the best way to spend your day? There's criminals out here.
You're one of them now. You were speeding.
Innocent until proven guilty. I'm fighting this till the death. I was not speeding.
No, that's awesome. So how does that help your argument? I get that like when you're in no traffic, you can go faster, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, because there was no traffic.
But you probably caused traffic. Probably people probably slowed down and went slower than they normally would because
it was a low traffic.
Well, they probably wanted to look and see what was going on with this arrest at a gas station. I know I would. So that's slowing me down. I
called an arrest. It maybe took 10 minutes. He was a nice guy. I think he was trying to hit a quota or something. It happens. But basically, that would never have happened if I was in bumper traffic, and I would have saved 15 minutes. Sounds like a win-win to me.
That does sound like a win-win. I disagree 100%, but I'll let you. That again, this is kind of one that like we'll both make our choices and we'll both live with our choices. Because life is about choices. We haven't really agreed so far. I know we've talked about this a couple of times, but I think this is our next topic, by the way. The old classic debate: is a hot dog a sandwich? And let me tell you right now, if you want to know that answer, you're not going to hear it on this podcast. I think something we both agree on is we're never going to touch it. We're
never going to touch it.
So yeah, that's what I said, is that we're never going to touch it.
Never going to touch it. Yep.
So we're never going to touch it. You can keep coming back every week hoping that we're going to touch it. We're not going to touch it.
Don't even put it in the Q&A.
If you put in the Q&A and help our engagement by adding Q&A sections, how dare you?
We would greatly appreciate that, but do not.
Yeah, but don't expect us to answer, is a hot dog a sandwich. We're not going to talk about it. Anyways, it sounds like we just agreed though.
Yeah. Wait. Why? Because we're not gonna.
I think we agree that we're never going to answer the question.
Never going to talk about that. Yep.
So that's what I just said is. So what I just said is we're never going to talk about it.
Never going to talk about it.
I think we're on the same.
Yep. I think we're in agreement.
Yeah. So I think that wraps up this episode.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Until we agree. This has been Matt Howard with Tyler Pritchard, and we'll see you next time on Until We Agree.
Until we agree.